So I often make videos on games that are objectively bad, but I love them for that. But today I want to mix it up. I'm going to tell you all about a game that is more crazy and unhinged than a lot of the games I've talked about on this channel, but I love it not because it's bad, but because it's actually good. Today I want to take you through the story of the Otome game, Cupid Parasite. If you don't know what an Otome is, it's a game where you date pretty boys. Cupid Parasite has insane plot points such as your dad falling in love with a Roomba, defeating a god with a selfie, building a flying car, and Alexander the Great? If you want to hear how all of these crazy things fit into the story, then stick around. But first, the disclaimer. Please do not take this video as a serious review. I just like to talk about silly games that I enjoy. This is going to be a retelling of the plot while I attempt to be funny along the way. So if you do not want to be spoiled on the plot of Cupid Parasite, do not watch this video. I'm going to be spoiling everything. Okay, disclaimer over. We're not going to waste any time here. Let's get into the insane, but actually fun and good story of Cupid Parasite. So the common route starts with Cupid living in Celestia, with all the other gods and goddesses. She's bored with her life of mindlessly shooting arrows at people to make them fall in love. Not only that, but couples are breaking up all the time, despite her Cupid's arrow telling her that they're compatible. Then you see Jupiter for like 2 seconds. Trust me, it's important that I point that out. Her father, Mars, yells at her for couples breaking up and marriage rates being down, but her aunt, Minerva, cheers her up by bringing her to her room. You see, Minerva likes to go to the human world all the time and engross herself in their culture. She brings all sorts of stuff from the human world to her room. She shows Cupid movies, phones, social media, a lot of hats, and they become super close. One day, while scrolling through social media, she finds a bunch of people talking about a place called Cupid Corporation. It's a marriage agency where they matchmake people, help them fall in love, and eventually get married. All of these posts talk about how they finally found love thanks to Cupid Corporation. Cupid is like, I see. I'm struggling to matchmake because humans have figured out how to do it themselves and they're doing it better. She tries to tell Mars, but he's like, no. Humans are stupid idiots who need to be guided by us, and you will go spend your whole life shooting arrows. And Cupid is like, screw you, Dad. I'm gonna prove you wrong by going to the human world, getting a job at Cupid Corporation, and becoming their top bridal advisor by matchmaking the way they do it. Minerva helps her escape to the human world, specifically a city called Los York, where she'll start going by the name Lynette Mirror. And then this little dude appears. Chi! Lynette decides to call him Chi, and figures he's one of Minerva's familiars. He's just this scared little dude that only Lynette can see and follows her around, and I just love him. So now we fast forward a few years. Lynette graduated college with a degree in romantic psychology, and now she has a job as a bridal advisor at Cupid Corporation. She gets called into a meeting with the CEO of Cupid Corporation, Shelby Snail. Yes, you heard me right. His name is actually Shelby Snail, and he's one of the love interests. This game really expects me to fall in love with a man named Shelby Snail. As I'm sure you can tell, I never got over his name. Shelby says that he'll give Lynette a promotion if she can matchmake the company's most infamous members, the Parasite 5. These are 5 men who countless advisors have tried to find partners for, and they just couldn't do it. They're way too difficult, and no one wants to marry them. Lynette sees this as her chance to prove her father wrong and accepts the assignment. So that's when she meets the love interests for the game, the Parasite 5. First up is Gil Lovecraft. He's known as the Lovelorn Parasite because he's unable to get over his first love. He just talks about her all the time and can't bring himself to date anyone else. It is extremely obvious to everyone but Lynette that the one he's hung up on is her. You see, back in college, Lynette, Gil, and their best friend, Clarice, were roommates. He fell in love with Lynette during that time and hasn't been able to get over her since then. But poor, sweet Lynette doesn't realize that. She's like, oh, I know. Gil is in love with Clarice. I have to help him get over her. Girl. Next up is Monsieur S, the prestige parasite. No one has ever seen him. He's a rich man who is trying to find a wife without ever meeting them in person first. It is very obvious to the player that Monsieur S is Shelby. Everyone thinks that Shelby Snail... I'm sorry, the name's so funny. Everyone thinks that Shelby Snail is a dedicated husband who loves his wife. I mean, he's the president of Cupid Corporation. It only makes sense that he'd be married. Well, he's not, and he wants to change that before anyone finds out his secret, but he obviously can't openly date in this situation, so he uses his assistant, Owen, as a stand-in. Owen goes on all dates for him and relays what Shelby wants to say. If this wasn't bad enough, he's obsessed with being SS, which means he must always be perfect at everything. He wants his wife to be SS too, so even if someone still wants to date him despite all the Owen stand-in stuff, Shelby rejects them anyway for not being SS. Sir, your name is Shelby Snail. You should be grateful anyone wants to take that name. Then we have Raul Aconite. If I pronounce his last name wrong, I'm sorry, don't kill me. He's a famous actor and the obsessed parasite. He's way too obsessed with mythology. He will not shut up about gods and goddesses and his interpretation of them and what he thinks they would do. He manages to turn every conversation into a mythological discussion. As you may imagine, this is super weird for Lynette. On top of that, Raul isn't even really interested in getting married. He just landed a role in a romance movie, and he can't act like he's in love to save his life, so his manager told him to sign up for Cupid Corporation to see what he can learn. Next is Ryuki, the glamour parasite. He's a fashion designer and thinks that you're ugly. So Ryuki has this form of synesthesia where when he looks at someone, he sees a color. So every time he meets someone, he spits out a hex code, and if he finds you ugly, you're getting a poopy brown color. Most people he finds so ugly that he literally can't even perceive them. They'll be talking to him and he just doesn't hear or see them. He's constantly spraying Lynette with mist to hydrate her skin and telling her what she should do to make herself more presentable. Being anywhere near Ryuki would destroy my self-esteem. Finally, we have the thieving parasite, Allan Melville. He's only interested in women who are already in love and steals them from their boyfriends. That's pretty terrible, but I forgive him every time he opens his mouth because, oh my god, his voice is beautiful.
だよね。思ってるさ。したいのに。でも俺の好みの女の子は知っての通り。だから一応焦ってここに来てるわけ。
And that is the Parasite 5. These are the boys that Lynette has to try and find a partner for. Spoiler alert, the only one for them is her. Lynette spends the common route trying to find them a special someone, which is impossible because they never pay attention. She makes them go to matchmaking events to talk to girls, but Gil won't stop talking about how he loves Lynette. Ryuki sprays them all in the face with mist and thinks they're ugly. Raul goes on about mythology. Allan makes all the girls mad because he only wants women who are already in love, and Shelby isn't even there. It's just Owen. She decides to go on practice dates with them all, which goes about as well as you'd expect. Gil is just like, woohoo, I'm on a date with Lynette. I really don't know how she hasn't figured out that he's in love with her. Ryuki gives her a full makeover. Raul takes her to a museum to talk about mythology, and then forces her to do pancration? Is that how you say that? I'm sure some of you are wondering what that is. Here is the definition that I got from Google. An unarmed combat sport introduced in the Greek Olympic Games. The athletes used boxing and wrestling techniques, but also others, such as kicking, holds, joint locks, and chokes on the ground. Poor Lynette. Owen takes her to a pool and is like, this is where Monsieur S likes to work out. Let me show you. Then he jumps into the pool fully clothed and swims laps. Can I date Owen instead? I'm kind of obsessed with how weird he is. Allan surprisingly has the most normal dates. They have bubble tea together, which he for some reason thinks is a full meal.
Bubble tea, bubble tea, bubble tea, bubble tea, bubble tea.
At the office, Lynette meets a new client, Catherine. She will be important later. Then the Cupid Corporation marketing team decides to do a 5-episode TV show called Parasite House. Lynette will live with the boys for a month and help make them more marriageable. They all move into one of Shelby's vacation homes for a month. I don't really know why they did this though, because they only film the show once a week for an hour, so there's really no need for them to live there. And the way that they film this show is insane. So they have this camera guy named Peter, and he looks familiar. They film the show live. There's this host named Bomber Chorizo who is back at the TV studio, and he's having a live conversation with no delays with everyone at Parasite House. And they just roll with it. Bomber Chorizo will ask them questions and narrate, and the boys are completely unhinged. This is such a bizarre way to go about a reality show. And putting the Parasite 5 on live television with no editing is a terrible idea. I mean, in one episode, they're just like, woo, let's show off our muscles. Totally unprompted. But thank God it's only their shirts that they took off. In a later episode, Allan and Gil start arguing over how a woman should be treated, and this somehow ends with them taking their pants off to compare sizes, and Lynette has to cover the camera as the other boys are like, oh hey, I want to compare too. It was at this moment where I was like, what am I playing? Then Gil gets cancelled on social media since he started it, but he writes a really sincere, well-written apology because he's a freelance writer, and everyone forgives him. This is nowhere near the weirdest plot point of this game. The rest of the episodes are a success, including this one where they have a cookout in the park with fans, and the camera is just left on a stationary tripod because the fans also like Peter and start chasing him around. And for some reason, Bomber Chorizo isn't in this episode, so there's no commentary. It's just a live feed of the cookout. Can you imagine watching this on live TV? The show ends and gives Cupid Corporation an even better reputation. They all move out of the house, but they're closer now and have a deep respect for Lynette, and she's excited to get back to work and help them find their partners. But then all 5 of them decide that they're not ready for marriage and quit Cupid Corporation. And that is the end of the common route. Now buckle up, because with each route, this game is going to get progressively more insane. The first route that I did was Shelby. I had to get him and his goofy name out of the way first. His route starts with him admitting to Lynette that he was Monsieur S and he's not actually married. Someone misinterpreted something he said on TV once and assumed he was married. He was put in an awkward situation where he didn't know what to do, so he just rolled with it. But he can't pretend forever and doesn't know what to do. Lynette says that she'll pretend to be his wife until he finds a real one. Fake dating enthusiasts, this route is for you. Lynette pretends to be Shelby's wife by going to dinners with him to meet with other rich and important people who have been asking to meet his wife. I don't really know what their plan was for when Shelby found a real wife and took her to dinners, because she would be a completely different person, but whatever. The two start to bond over how much they love their jobs and the company, and they both move into the vacation home from Parasite House to feel more like husband and wife. Okay, you two are just asking to fall in love with each other at this point. We're shown several scenes of a rival marriage agency that wants to take Cupid Corporation down. I wonder who that is. They have an insider working at Cupid Corporation to feed them information that they can use to crush them. I wonder who that is. Shelby notices that someone is following him around and trying to get pictures of him living alone. It's likely that whoever this is wants to expose Shelby's single status. I wonder who that could be. Lynette and Shelby actually don't suspect Owen at all. They suspect Peter, the camera guy. He recently was hired as Owen's assistant, and he seems to already magically know where everything in the office is. Which, yeah, that's weird, but it's not him. They catch wind that someone got a picture of Lynette and is going to expose that she's Shelby's wife. He's like, nope, they will not do that to her. I got her too deeply involved. She's not really my wife. Not that it really matters, because she's going to be your wife eventually. He holds a press conference where he tells the truth, but no one actually really cares, because they're all like, oh, it was a misunderstanding. He was put in an awkward situation. He's fine. Something tells me that the internet wouldn't be so forgiving in real life. Shelby Snell is cancelled. He should have spoken up right away. Then we learn Shelby's tragic backstory that explains why he's so obsessed with being SS. In middle school, he got the best grades in the class, but then a new student arrived and got better grades than him. Yeah, that's it. The rival bridal agency is mad that Cupid Corporation's reputation still isn't ruined, so they're like, screw it, let's kidnap Shelby and Lynette. They get knocked out, and 2 goons are driving a boat, taking them away. Lynette wakes up first and makes the goons fall in love with her using her Cupid's bow, and she tells them to take them back to shore. When they arrive, they run into the one who's been feeding information to the rival agency, Owen. No. He admits that he did it because he hates Shelby for making him be his stand-in.
そうですよこの僕年人当変僕アンパンタンお前の母ちゃんで別荘
He wasn't able to search for love himself because he had to do it for Shelby. He says that he became a laughingstock after Parasite House, and no one wanted to date him because of it.
男らしい人が好きだっていう女性がいたのでほふ前進をしたんです
Owen, sweetie, I think the reason no one wants to date you is because you're kind of a weirdo. Owen freaks out and tries to shoot the pair, but Shelby is quicker and shoots Owen's hand. Later, alone in the office, Lynette is confronted by the one running the rival agency, her father, Mars. No. He admits that he did it to try and sabotage Lynette so she'd come home. He also says that he mind-controlled Owen into joining him. Lynette is obviously very mad, so she shoots him with her Cupid's arrow right as he's looking at a Roomba. Mars is now doomed to be in love with a Roomba until the effects of the arrow wear off in a month. And then Shelby and Lynette admit their feelings for each other and get married. Yay! You are now Mrs. Snail. Congratulations. Next up is Ryuki. Now, in real life, Ryuki and I would never get along. He would think that I look like a potato, and I would cry myself to sleep every night thinking about what he'd say about me. But his route was actually one of my favorites. It starts with Lynette reaching out to him because she has a client that would love to have a suit from his family's fashion brand for his wedding. Ryuki's like, okay, let's meet up, and then makes her do yoga so he can test his new yoga clothing line. This meeting leads to them hanging out a lot more often. Right now, Ryuki's clothing brand is only for men, but Lynette discovers that he secretly wants to make women's clothes, and she encourages him to try it. She uses the clothes to dress up one of her clients, Melanie. She's super insecure and shy, and Ryuki finds her so hideous that he is unable to perceive her until she starts dressing nicer. Melanie likes Owen, and the two decide to go on a date. Aw, Owen, someone is willing to look past you military crawling at random. Ryuki dresses Owen up for the date as well, and then he and Lynette spy on them all day to make sure it goes well. They kiss, and Lynette and Ryuki are like, huh. So remember how Ryuki sees colors when he looks at people and is always assigning them hex codes? Well, now when Ryuki looks at Lynette, he sees different colors from before. He sees pretty colors. He's like, what the heck? Why is this happening? There's something wrong with my eyes. She hasn't changed her appearance, so why does she look so pretty? He freaks out and goes to the eye doctor, and they're like, no, your eyes are fine, buddy. He calls his sister, and she's like, you're in love with her, silly. And he's all, Oh. From the moment Ryuki was introduced, this is exactly what I was hoping they were going to do with his character, and I was eating it up. The Parasite House crew has a reunion, and while there, Gil confesses his love to Lynette. Oh, poor baby. This isn't your route. You can't do that. Lynette is like, oh, really? Sorry. And Gil is like, no! Ryuki overhears and gets jealous and kisses her, and Lynette is like, ah, and runs away. And then Ryuki is like, maybe that wasn't the best choice. Ryuki tells Lynette that he loves her and asks her to meet him in front of Cupid Corporation in a few days if she feels the same. In the meantime, he designs a beautiful wedding dress for her and brings it on the day of their meeting. There's this whole wacky scenario where Lynette gets pulled into a wedding photo shoot for the company, and Ryuki is like, oh no, she's getting married, and rushes over there, and she's like, oh no, I love you. He gives her the wedding dress, and they rush to meet Ryuki's grandma and get her approval. I didn't mention this, but a big thing about Ryuki is that his grandma is very strict and is the one who runs the family's fashion brand. He's desperate for her approval. They meet up with her, and she approves of Lynette and loves the wedding dress he made. She's like, well, now you don't have to marry this woman I thought would be perfect for you. Out walks Catherine. Yeah, remember her? She's not dressed in clothes that cover her up so much. Lynette looks at her and is like, wait, Mom? Yeah, Catherine is actually Lynette's mom, the goddess Venus. She disguised herself and was watching over her. She's like, glad you're happy, bye, and then disappears. And Ryuki goes, is your mom a magician? And Lynette is like, yeah, let's go with that. And then they live happily ever after. So Shelby and Ryuki have the most normal routes, which means things are about to get really crazy because it's time for Gil. A lot of his route is filled with flashbacks of Lynette and Gil's time together as college roommates. He taught her a lot about the human world, and Lynette looks up to him and thinks of him as a brother. But poor Gil fell in love with her and cannot get her to realize that. Back in our time, Lynette decides to give him a call and see how he's doing. Gil is a freelance, work-from-home writer. He chose this job so he could spend as much time with his love as possible, as he thinks that that is what she wants. Lynette says that if it were her, she'd want a guy who follows his dreams. Gil's like, oh, and decides to go this route instead. He loves cars and has always wanted to write for a magazine called Carcraft Road. He starts working towards this dream, but then he gets kicked out of his apartment for a while because the building smells really bad and no one can live there until they fix it. Lynette and Clarice, who are still roommates, decide to let him move in with them since it'll be like their college days. As they live together, Lynette begins to fall for him and starts to wonder if maybe the one Gil is lovelorn over isn't Clarice, but her. Yay! You're finally figuring it out! I don't know how it took this long. It was so obvious. One day, Gil's brother visits and drops the bomb that their dad owns a luxury car company. Gil's family is super rich, and he grew up in a mansion. The reason he kept it a secret is because he resented his father for working so much and ignoring his mom. He never wanted to be like him, so he left his family behind and decided to be a writer. Then Gil lands a job at Carcraft Road and loves it so much that he works all the time and is never home. Gil, remember 2 seconds ago when you said you didn't want to be like your dad? Lynette gets super lonely, and now she is the one who's lovelorn. One night, Gil is actually home. Lynette can't bear it anymore and admits her feelings, and Gil immediately goes for the smooch. And then they do a lot more than that, if you know what I mean. Lynette wakes up in the middle of the night to see that Gil got a text about writing an article to expose Cupid Corporation. Lynette feels upset and betrayed, and instead of just asking Gil about it, she goes back to Celestia. Once Gil wakes up and sees that she's gone, he starts to worry. He worries even more when he sees the text that he got and realizes Lynette probably misunderstood. The text was actually about how Gil and one of his co-workers were working together to stop a shady, untrue article on Cupid Corporation from coming out. Gil starts running all over town searching for Lynette, but of course he can't find her because she's in Celestia. Allan and Clarice find him and explain that Lynette is Cupid, and she's in Celestia right now, and humans can't get there. Then Clarice straight up disappears. So obviously there's more to those two than meets the eye, but that's a story for another route. Gil heads to his hometown of Baltimore and goes to his old workshop from his childhood. He works for days and creates a flying car. Oh yeah, we're going there. He takes off into the sky. Gil crashes into Celestia with his car. He explains everything to Lynette and professes his love for her, and she's like, aw, Gil, let's go home. But then Mars is all, no way, you're not taking my daughter away. And he grows really, really tall and is going to beat Gil up. And then Gil is like, not on my watch. That's when his car transforms into Bumblpig.
文明の利器、人間が考えたロボットってやつだよ。
Oh yeah, we're going there. The two fight it out for a bit. Gil is badly injured, but in the end, Mars decides to accept Gil and let the two live happily in the human world. When they get back, they realize that the car is now sentient and can talk. The end. I told you that these routes were going to get crazier, so get ready, because it's time for Raul. So remember how Raul joined Cupid Corporation so he could learn to act like he was in love for his movie? Well, it turns out he still sucks at acting like he's in love. His manager decides to hire Lynette to teach him all about love, so she starts going with him to shoots and rehearsals and pretty much anywhere Raul goes. She finds out that Raul has never been in love, but he hooks up with people all the time. I don't know why I was so shocked to learn this, because it makes sense. He's an actor. But I think it's because he looks like this 70% of the time, so I'm like, aw, baby. Anyway, Lynette is like, you can't do that. It won't lead to love. Raul goes, well, how do you know that? You've never tried it. Oh, I know. You should try it with me. Lynnette's like, okay. So they do. And then Lynette goes, okay, I was right. That was mindless and won't lead to love. You're banned from hooking up while you're trying to learn about love. So then the two spend a lot of time hanging out and getting to know each other, and Raul takes her to his mythology club, and all the guys there think she's super cool, which makes Raul jealous, and they hook up again. Then Raul gets a stalker, and she goes after him with a knife, and Lynette has no choice but to save him by using her lead-in arrow on her, which makes people fall out of love. So now Raul obviously knows she's Cupid, and is like, oh my god, you're a goddess, this is so cool. She tells him all about what the real gods are like and Celestia, but Lynette is pleasantly surprised because Raul makes it a point to treat her the same. He says that he doesn't like hanging out with her because she's Cupid, but because she's Lynette. Raul's acting improves a ton, so his manager is like, okay, we don't need you anymore, Lynette. Bye! The two are really sad now that they can't see each other all the time anymore. That is until Raul gets invited to help dig up some old ancient ruins, and he invites Lynette to go with him, and she happily agrees. They head to the ruins, and oh my god, look how adorable he is in his little explorer outfit. But things turn south when the pair falls through the ground, and they land in these old underground ruins. They're stuck down there for days, and it gets crazy. They find secret passageways, and go driving around in this random car that they find. For some reason, a manticore from Celestia is down there, and Raul defeats it by stripping and doing pancration. Eventually, Lynette gets hurt, and Raul is terrified of losing her, so he yells to the gods and asks them for help. They magically get transported to Celestia. They don't question it much, and Lynette shows him around, and they confess their love, and aw. So now is when I have to explain something to you that has happened in every route so far, but I haven't really mentioned. When Cupid falls in love with a human, she turns into one herself. She's no longer a god, and can no longer use Cupid's arrows. So when she and Raul kiss, she becomes human. That's when Minerva shows up and steals the bow and arrows. She admits that the only reason she befriended Lynette and sent her to the human world is so that she would fall in love and turn into a human, so she could take the bow. When this happened, I felt so betrayed. Throughout the routes, Minerva will show up and hang out with Lynette and be her cool aunt. I loved her. She was my cool aunt too. I'm honestly still hurt that it was all a lie. Moving on, she shoots Raul with both a regular arrow and a lead-in arrow at the same time, and this turns him into Alexander the Great. Yeah. You didn't mishear me. He turns into Alexander the Great. Let me explain. Back in the day, Minerva and Alexander the Great were lovers. Raul is apparently the reincarnation of Alexander the Great. It is so crazy that Alexander the Great reincarnated as a mythology-obsessed himbo. Apparently, if you shoot someone with the two arrows at the same time, they'll turn into themselves from a past life. Minerva kicks Lynette out of Celestia so she can be with Alexander. Lynette is back home and depressed when she starts freaking out and urging her to go outside. She discovers that there are major storms and destruction, and it's all caused by Minerva and Alexander, who want to conquer the world. She finds them and tries to bring Raul back. She does the whole, come on Raul, I know you're in there, it's me. But it actually doesn't work. Then Alexander remembers the reason he died was thanks to Minerva. She tried to give him some homemade medicine she came up with to make him live forever, but instead it destroyed his immune system and he caught malaria and died. He gets mad and knocks her out. Lynette takes this moment to steal the bow and arrows back. She uses all of her strength to use it. Despite being human now, she's able to use the last remaining bit of her godhood to shoot him with the two arrows. Raul is back, and Minerva is punished by the other gods. Everyone who witnessed what happened thought it was promo for a movie, and the director of the romance movie Raul starred in was like, oh, Raul, that was a great concept you came up with. I'm going to rewrite the whole movie to be like this. And he does, and he casts Lynette as the love interest, and it's a huge success. And that is Raul's route. I don't think I will ever be over him turning into Alexander the Great. It is so random and the last thing I ever expected to happen in an otome. It's time for Allan, the thieving parasite who steals women from their boyfriends. Whatever impression you have of Allan right now, prepare for it to be completely different in a few minutes. So remember how all the boys quit Cupid Corporation at the end of the common route? Well, that's technically not true for Allan. He got kicked out because he kept ruining other members' relationships. Lynette decides to go see him and tell him off for it. Allan works at and lives above a pillow shop, so she heads there to find Allan with a customer looking like this. Lynette is like, OMG, you're a god? Well, I'm Cupid. And Allan is like, oh, no, I'm a demon, more specifically an incubus. He feeds on women's dreams, but the best tasting dreams are of women in love. He shows Lynette how he does it, and basically he puts them to sleep and takes the form of their ideal person in their dream and shows them a good time. And then Allan eats that dream. Back at work, Lynette hears a bunch of women are leaving Cupid Corporation because their dreams are better than reality. They don't need boyfriends. They only need their dreams. Lynette realizes that this is Allan's fault and goes to confront him. She decides to shoot him with one of her arrows so that he can experience how great love is and leave these women alone and realize how terrible what he's doing is. But Allan is like, wait, don't do that. That arrow kills demons. But Lynette has already accidentally shot the arrow, so she quickly jumps in front of it, meaning she's now made herself fall in love with Allan. The effects of Cupid's arrow will wear off after 30 days, unless it's like true love, or someone you're really compatible with. So Lynette is like, okay, I love you now, so I'll let you eat my dreams every day if you date me for a month. And he's like, okay. So the two spend a happy, cute month together. Allan is being weirdly sweet and soft. Eventually, he's like, okay, I love you. And they're like a real couple now. But then Lynette starts to get really sick, and she only recovers when she's away from Allan. At the end of the 30 days, they go on a date, and Lynette is hoping that she'll still love him when the effects of the arrow wears off. Then Allan stabs her and kills her. I was so shocked at this moment. Okay, lore time. A long time ago, Allan and Lynette were angels bound to each other in heaven. They spent all of their time together. That's when Jupiter showed up and decided that Lynette would be the new Cupid. You see, the 12 strongest gods, like Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Minerva, etc., they're all immortal. As for all the other more minor gods, like Cupid, they disappear after 400 years, as using their divine artifacts depletes their energy. They take the angels from heaven and turn them into gods to replace the old ones. Cupid just died, and Lynette has been chosen as the replacement. Allan doesn't want to be separated from her, so he tries to stop them, but Jupiter's soldiers punish him for defying the god. They cast him out of heaven, and he falls all the way down to hell, which turns him into a demon. He doesn't want Lynette to just be used by the gods and disappear, so he wants her to fall in love with a human, so she'll become one herself and live a normal, fulfilling life. He meets Clarice in hell, who is a succubus, and she agrees to help him. Since Lynette arrived in the human world, the two have been watching over her and trying to make her fall in love with a human. However, she fell in love with Allan instead. He is a demon. If a god falls in love with a demon, it kills them even faster. I know this is a lot, but it's about to get even more complicated, so hold on. Allan decided to kill Lynette and plant her heart into a human baby. He watched over her as she grew up, but by the time she's in college again, she ends up remembering everything, which just makes her turn back into a god, and she still loves Allan. Then Jupiter shows up and is like, get away from Cupid, you demon, and zaps him with his lightning. He takes Lynette to Celestia and tells her that one of the 12 great gods, Juno, has been missing for years, and he wants her to take her place. Allan tries to fly up to Celestia to save her, despite being badly injured and knowing demons can't get in. When he gets close, he overhears that Cupid is supposed to become Juno, and he's like, well, I guess that's fine. She'll live forever then. He gives up and starts to fall, but then Lynette is like, nope, I'm out of here, and leaps out of heaven. She and Allan fall to hell together. Now they're both demons, and can live together forever. So, do you think differently of the thieving parasite now? You thought he was a player, but he's actually a depressed demon trying to save his beloved. How is this sad story in the same game that has Bumblepig and Alexander the Great? So I really liked all of the Parasite 5. They're very lovable. But I finished their routes and was like, man, usually in an Otome, there's one character that I just love so much, and he is my route. He grabs me by the heart, and he's my everything. And while I really like the Parasite 5, none of them did that for me. Wait, what's this? Jupiter route. Here he is, my favorite character, Jupiter. The Parasite 5 is about to become the Parasite 6. In this route, we learn that Jupiter would always watch Lynette and Allan in heaven. He grew to care about them. The one who chose Lynette as the new Cupid was Mercury. It broke Jupiter's heart to turn her into Cupid and to see Allan fall from heaven. From then on, Jupiter would always watch over Cupid to make sure she could live as happy a life as possible. So in this route, Lynette actually gets permission from Jupiter to study in the human world for 4 years to matchmake better. So all the gods happily send her off to go to college in Lost York. And of course, Chi comes along too.
ふう。やはり、この格好の方が落ち着く。
What? Nothing could have prepared me for this twist. I literally sat there, jaw dropped, staring at my screen for what felt like ages when this happened. Chi, the little familiar that's been with us the whole time, is Jupiter. So yeah, now I realize that despite being the leader of all the gods, Jupiter is actually a huge scaredy cat who is afraid of everything. Rats, papers falling over, spicy food. They all terrify him, and he has to put on a front of being brave because he is the all-powerful Jupiter. He is so pathetic, yet so powerful at the same time. I love him. So Lynette and Chi go through college together, and Allan shows up and gets a job as a professor and keeps trying to get her to fall in love with literally anyone. In school, Lynette learns about the 6 love types: agape, ludus, mania, storge, eros, and pragma. Each one fits one of the 6 main love interests. Interesting. Lynette gets an internship at Cupid Corporation, but there's something evil lurking around, looking for Jupiter and Cupid. So Jupiter decides that in order to keep Lynette safe, he will also work at Cupid Corporation. He takes on a human form and assumes the identity of Peter Flage. It may not have been obvious that Jupiter was Chi, but it was very obvious that Jupiter was Peter. Unfortunately, due to him being a god and spending his time in the human world as Chi, and due to his being scared of everything, Peter sucks at his job. I don't know how he doesn't get fired. One day, Lynette sees a compatible couple and wants to shoot them with her arrow. She tries to do so in secret, but right as she lets the arrow go, Chief flies by because he's scared of something and on the run. The arrow hits him and causes him to turn into Peter. So now Lynette knows that Chi is Peter, but not that he's Jupiter. Peter doesn't want her to know, so he's like, oh yeah, I'm one of Jupiter's familiars. And now we have the reverse of Allan's route, where Lynette agrees to date Peter for a month until the effects of the arrow wear off. But as you may have guessed, they fall in love for real. Also during this time, the Parasite 5 join Cupid Corporation, and they do Parasite House again. Peter is an assistant on set instead of the camera guy this time. Bomber Chorizo dubs him the sensitive parasite and wants him to join the show. This officially makes them the Parasite 6 and makes for some very funny dynamics.
そちらで何か不穏な音が。これは、危機に違いない。サタンが私を呼んでいる。
サタン？呼ばれても絶対行っちゃダメだよ。奴に捕まると意識失っちゃうから。
Then one day, this dude shows up at Cupid Corporation. Jupiter sees him and is like, oh god, we gotta go, and takes Lynette back to Celestia. Once there, he tries to be like, oh hey, it's me, Jupiter. But Lynette is like, I know you're Peter. And he's like, oh. He explains that the guy they saw is his brother, Zeus. In real life, Zeus and Jupiter are the same god. One is his Roman name and one is Greek. But in the game, they're brothers, and over time, humans got confused and thought they were one person. All the stories where he's bad and sleeping with a bunch of people is Zeus, where the good stories are actually Jupiter. Zeus is even more powerful than Jupiter, and all the gods sealed him away because he tried to take over the world on his own. Juno, his wife, went to bring him back, but he killed her and ate her to become more powerful. Now he's back and wants to take over the world and make the humans worship him. Lynette and Jupiter team up with the Parasite 5 to defeat Zeus. How do they do it? By posting a shirtless selfie of Raul on Instagram and showing him how humans are fangirling over it, meaning they care more about that than him. No, I am not joking. He is devastated by this. Then Lynette has to shoot the Parasite 6 with an arrow while they yell out their love type. This charges up the arrow's power. She shoots it at Zeus and he turns into a rock. Sure. Why not? The rest of the Parasite 5 is in love with Lynette now, but she doesn't care. She loves Jupiter. He turns her into the new Juno, the goddess of marriage, and she becomes his wife. The end. And those are all of the insane Cupid Parasite routes. There is a sequel, and it is also crazy. I won't go into major details about these routes, but I do want to give you a few sentence summary of each one. In Shelby's route, he can't get it up, so he eats a live turtle to try and fix the issue. I wish I was joking, but this is actually one of the main plot points of his route. Ryuki's route is pretty normal. He just gets jealous of this model who is obsessed with Lynette's bone structure. In Gil's route, Lynette gets kidnapped by evil oyster salesmen, and he saves her by transforming into Lovecraft Man. I wasn't sure how they were going to top Bumblepig, but they did it. In Allan's route, they live for over 100 years and conveniently don't mention how the rest of the Parasite 5 are dead now. They decide to move to Hell, where Lynette has a demon form that I don't love. Satan tries to declare war on the gods, so they kill him, and Allan becomes the new Satan. As for Jupiter, he and Lynette go to the human world to help him become less of a scaredy cat by doing things like bungee jumping. Then Zeus, as a rock, freezes the earth, so all of the gods have to put all living beings to sleep in heaven so they don't freeze to death. They defeat Rock Zeus by having the other gods go to outer space and channel the energy of the planets into the Cupid's bow for Lynette to shoot at the rock and destroy it. Then they have to unfreeze the earth and put everything back, which takes a few thousand years. Okay, that was a lot. And then there's Raul's route. Lynette gets kidnapped by a man who has a condition where every time he eats a lobster, he turns into one for 10 minutes. Lynette's godly blood is the cure. He will have his revenge on everyone who made fun of him for this condition by turning them into lobsters and keeping the cure for himself. Raul and Lynette team up with this talking lobster to stop him.
真珠？いや、私はただのオマールエビさ。だが数百年生きていれば、オマールエビも喋れるようになるとも。
Raul always has the most unhinged routes. They also include a new love interest in the sequel that actually became my second favorite character. His name is Marinice, and he can see people's futures by looking at them through a donut. It turns out he's actually the prince of a planet far, far away, and said planet is inhabited by these dudes. So yeah, he fits right in with this goofy cast. But that does it for Cupid Parasite, an extremely silly Otome game that I love. There are so many unhinged plot points and characters, and the game just embraces it. That's what it's trying to be. Its goal is to be goofy. It wants you to just laugh, relax, and have a good time. And this game definitely did that for me. I loved spending my evenings with this game. It was just a nice way to chill out and have a laugh. I highly recommend Cupid Parasite to anyone who is interested in playing it. You will not regret it. If you have played the game, please let me know in the comments who your favorite is. Obviously, I'm a Peter girly. They all have a special place in my heart though. Even you, Shelby Snail. Let me know what other games or media you would like me to make a video on. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to see more content from me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!